Greetings, days, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm gonna making a tier list for Kafka support units. This is entirely based on my opinion and experience for both as a Genshin Impact and a Honkai starter player, among us a theory crafter, I guess, because I've tried many different types of games. So, let's begin. Before we begin, I must say that Kafka's playstyle revolves around dot damage and her being as a main DPS, therefore she would be classing among the other main DPSs and she would be good with dot damage focused characters. Okay, let's begin with the tier list. First unit to have is Asta. Asta is an A tier unit because she's a great unit to pair with Kafka because of her buffs as a harmony character and her dot burn damage that she also applies, which is great for Kafka and her dot team if you wanna have and use her. Next up is Bronya, which, yeah, it's Bronya. She's the best unit to have as a support for the main DPS, therefore she's going S tier immediately. Kafka can easily do more things because of her. Next up is Serval, which applies loads of shock on enemies, which Kafka actually wants because of Serval's shock damage of overall dot that she applies constantly, especially with her ulti and his skill and any other she has. It's a perfect pair to have them together. Next up, Heta. Heta is going on D tier. She's very weak and she doesn't really match up well with Kafka's playstyle. As a supportive character with as a sub DPS, it wouldn't work because they just don't match up well. And as a main DPS Heta and a sub DPS Kafka, it still wouldn't work because, yeah, Heta is Heta, very weak numbers and a 4-star unit. Next up, Silly. She's a main DPS, therefore they wouldn't be working together because of both being main DPS, therefore both of them are selfish in terms of skill points, therefore, yeah, it would be kinda hard and you will lose loads of damage for both of them when you put them together. It would be better to have one on each team. Next up, Jeopard. Jeopard is going S tier because he's just pressing ultimate and saving his team with his shield for many rounds and occasionally use a freeze on a target if they're gonna attack. So yeah, I'm using him and he's a very great option to have. And next up is Natasha. Natasha is going on a B tier. She's a great healer, but because of the new anti-heal nerfs that, or debuffs you could say, on the new enemies, it wouldn't work as much. He's still good, but not as good as they were in 1.0. Next up, Pella. Pella is going A tier. She's a great support unit to have with her defense rate and her removal of buffs on the enemies. Clara is going on C tier. She is better than having a main DPS, but in terms of supportive capabilities, but still not the best choice. She's great at doing constant damage, which could work with dots, but it's better to have a fully dot based team with Kafka, so it doesn't have the greatest of synergies. Next up, Sampo. Sampo is S tier, the S's of the S. Is the best unit to have. Actually, let me make a new row. And yeah, best support unit. Which will go for Sampo by himself. Because, yeah, his kit is evolving only around Dot, which is very good for a support unit. And he's a 4-star, therefore he's very accessible, especially on Kafka banner, which you can actually get him if you don't have him. Because many players don't have him. I have him only on 0 Eidolons, but it's, yeah, he is very rare. But if you have him, I would recommend building him up before the Kafka banner. But if you're gonna get him along with Kafka, you should beat them together. It's like Silly and Bronya combo. Yes, Sampo is like a better Bronya for Silly, but here is Kafka. So yeah, if you have him, use him if you want to have the best damage dealing Kafka with Hedot. Next up, Physical Trailblazer. That's a very weird thing to have because there's Trailblazer Fire, so I recommend using Trailblazer Fire because, yeah, physical doesn't work at all with Kafka, like barely, against maybe physical weakness enemies, but still that's very situational and you could use probably other AoE supports. Next up, Hook. Hook is a good supportive unit to have because he doesn't really need too many skill points, only after she uses her ultimate for her talent. And she can just constantly do damage and do lots of burn dot damage. She has 9 high numbers. It's very good. If you don't have Sampo Seval, you could use her. Still, I recommend Sampo Seval over here and the defense support, like the pad. Next up is Lotsa. Lotsa is a defense support, which is the best healer in the game, probably because of his dispelling buffs, removing debuffs from you with his cleanse, AoE cleanse actually, and constant healing, which is on par with Jeopard shields. So either Jeopard or Lutza would be great for a defense support with Kafka. Next up, Jingwan. Jingwan, C tier, he's a main DPS, but because he can do lots of lightning break on the enemies, could be used maybe because of the lightning rod, but still low, low tier. Next up, Yansing. Same as Silly, down here, main DPS. Both of us, both Kafka and Yansing would be selfish, therefore they would conflict and not really have a great team synergy. Next up, Bailu. Bailu would be an A tier support, probably between Natasha and Lords as in terms of healer, because though she does have a revive, she does have the lens for the debuffs, and yeah. Though she heals a lot, still you might get one-shotted by an enemy, which, yeah, you don't need tons of heals there, you need something to actually protect you. Next up, Tingyun. Tingyun, S tier, we know that, she's a great support unit to have. And yeah, no more words there. Next up, Xingxi. She's going bottom tier because way too many skill point hungry and doesn't have any synergy with Kafka in terms of dot. Next up, Susang. Would be used because of her breaking easily physical weakness enemies and doing plenty of damage and very skill point efficient if you have Eidolons. And yeah. Next up, Trailblazer Fire. She would be, or he would be, based on what gender you use, B tier. It's those are good shields and defend overall damage reduction when Trailblazer Fire use skill, but still it's not good for fighting against AoE bosses, especially because you're gonna get wrecked if you're gonna use only Trailblazer Fire as your only defense support. It won't work just like Jeopard. And then next up we have March, the worst defensive unit. She goes C, very hard to use, but if you don't have anything else, which I doubt that because there's the basic fire, you may use here, I guess. Next up, Dan Hang. Dan Hang is going C tier. He's only above the other main DPS because he might be able to do some wind shear break on enemies along with Sampo. So they could be used like that, but still, that's the only possible solution. Then we have Himeko, she's going A tier, she's great because she applies lots of burn, does lots of AoE, and she doesn't really need loads of, well, skill points because you could play along her extra attack that she has. Wealth is also an A tier because of his universally good kit that he can use on every team, and he can pair up great with Kafka in terms of a dot team with his damage vulnerability that he applies on the enemies and slow and imprisonment. Silverwolf is an S tier because he's Silverwolf and applies the weaknesses on enemies, so Kafka could be used in every scenario if you pair it up with Silverwolf. Alan, yep, he's going down there because he's heavily dependent on having a healer, and yeah, it's kinda hard to have more slots based on Alan. It's better to just put them on a different team. Along with Blade, you just have a different comp synergy with those two. So yeah, that was a tier list. Hope you enjoyed and learned something from it and actually help you for anything difficult challenge that you're gonna face in Honkai Star Rail. Hope you enjoy. Comment down any thoughts that you have and anything that you believe should go higher or lower, depending on your opinion and experience. And hope you like and subscribe. Goodbye.